The first breath of morning air hits the city like a whisper. Streetlights flicker as if unsure whether to fade or linger. Somewhere, a train hums along invisible tracks, carrying lives that will never intersect with yours. And in a quiet apartment, a man pours a single coin into a jar. The coin drops with a metallic ring. Outside, a bakery door swings open. The scent of warm bread curls through the street, brushing against the passing suits and tired faces. One young woman pauses, pulls her coat tighter, and exhales a cloud of hesitation into the cold. Far above, on a rooftop, a crow balances on the edge of a chimney. Its wings catch the gray light and shimmer briefly before it takes off, disappearing into a city that moves faster than the eye can follow. 3 moments, separate lives, unconnected events. Yet beneath the surface, a quiet rhythm binds them all together, a rhythm that no one notices. The man by the jar doesn't think of wealth. He doesn't imagine fortunes. He simply drops the coin because he wants to. Because it is small. Because it is possible. Most people dismiss small actions. They assume the storm comes only from hurricanes, not from tiny drops of rain that fall relentlessly, day after day. And yet, those drops carve valleys, bend rivers, and sculpt mountains. There is a strange psychology to smallness. Research shows humans undervalue what is immediate and tangible while overestimating what is distant and dramatic. We chase headlines, viral moments, the illusion of overnight success, while the subtle, silent actions, the small, consistent deposits into a life, go unnoticed. Imagine planting seeds in a barren field. 1, 2, 3 seeds each day. You do not see the tree tomorrow. You do not see the shade for months. And yet, invisible to the impatient eye, the roots grow deep. The coin in the jar is one seed. A subscription to knowledge, a habit of saving, a minute spent learning, each is a seed. Each is invisible in its impact at first. Yet together, they amass a force so powerful it becomes unstoppable. This is the paradox of micro-investments. Small choices, tiny repetitions, actions so small they seem meaningless. And yet, through compounding, through psychological momentum, they grow. They become wealth, not just of money, but of freedom, of opportunity, of power over one's own life. The young woman outside the bakery. She checks her phone. A notification from an app tells her she earned $2 from a round of investments she barely remembers making. She smiles faintly, a small flicker of realization. The power is quiet. It does not shout. It whispers, nudging her world slowly, subtly. Even the crow, circling high above, plays a role in this invisible network. In nature, small movements, small choices, affect ecosystems, ripple outward. Every flap of a wing, every grain of seed displaced. Patterns emerge, connections unseen, forces unrecognized until they cannot be ignored. Money behaves the same way. Behavior scientists have observed that people are shockingly poor at predicting financial growth when it comes in small increments. The human brain is wired to respond to extremes, the lottery jackpot, the crash, the windfall. Yet micro-investments thrive in the shadowlands of perception. A single dollar saved, a single fraction invested, repeated daily, compounds. Slowly, quietly, like snowflakes collecting until an avalanche is inevitable. And when it comes, the world is changed. The same person who once ignored pennies now holds the key to unimaginable leverage. Consider society itself. Every massive corporation, every industry giant, started with what seemed trivial. Amazon began in a garage. Every tiny decision, every small reinvestment, every overlooked detail, accumulated until it became unstoppable. There is an almost mystical beauty to this, growth through patient, invisible steps. And yet, most of us refuse the first step. Fear whispers that our actions are too small to matter. We look at billion-dollar figures and feel hopeless. But the psychology of success is counterintuitive. It is not the leap, but the step. Not the headline, but the habit. Not the visible explosion, but the silent accumulation. In the apartment, the man drops another coin. A breath. A pause. He doesn't see the future. He does not know that 10 years from now, that coin, every coin, will be part of a life entirely different. A life free from the constraints he imagines now. Science calls this the power of compounding. Sociologists call it behavioral momentum. Economists call it small, repeated investments. But to the human heart, it is magic. Subtle, quiet, transformational magic that builds silently while the world rushes past. The young woman walks into the bakery, buys a loaf of bread with exact change, and pockets the receipt. In her wallet is another small investment, another seed quietly growing, unnoticed by anyone. Outside, life moves on. Cars, pedestrians, the indifferent rhythm of a city that does not pause. And still, the unseen forces work. A habit forms. A mindset shifts. The accumulation begins to bend reality in favor of those who dare to take small, consistent action. The psychological effect is profound. Action breeds confidence, confidence breeds more action, and over time, the impossible becomes inevitable. People forget that the human brain responds more to patterns than to scale. It notices repetition. It rewards consistency. When you invest micro-actions, your mind adjusts. You begin to perceive opportunities. You notice trends. You anticipate change. You become someone capable of creating wealth that was once unimaginable. Across the world, millions of people ignore the power of the tiny. They wait for luck. They chase headlines. They gamble with what they have, thinking the only way to win is by risking everything. Meanwhile, the quiet accumulators, the micro-investors, are reshaping reality under the radar. Imagine a river forming from invisible trickles, each drop insignificant. But over time, the river carves canyons, shapes mountains, redirects landscapes. That is how micro-investments work. Each small action seems meaningless, but cumulatively, it is unstoppable. Even the most brilliant minds fail to grasp it intuitively. Behavioral economics reveals we are wired to underestimate growth that is gradual. We overvalue immediate gratification. We underestimate patience. We undervalue consistency. Yet the universe of wealth, both mental and financial, rewards precisely these qualities. The man adds another coin. The young woman scans her app. Somewhere, someone else checks an investment that grew by fractions. It is invisible in isolation. It is quiet in scale. But it is happening everywhere. Micro-investments ripple through lives, economies, societies, quietly shifting the axis of possibility. And then, as night falls, the city changes subtly. Lights burn longer. Shadows stretch differently. The cumulative effect of countless small actions manifests not in a single explosion but as a pervasive shift. People do not notice it consciously, yet everything feels slightly different. The world is full of forbidden secrets disguised as ordinary routines. The secret of small, repeated investments is one of them. Hidden in plain sight. Invisible to those who dismiss the tiny. Yet those who understand it wield power few imagine. The next morning, sunlight leaks through blinds, casting stripes across the wooden floor. Dust dances in the shafts of light, each particle suspended like a secret waiting to be noticed. The man reaches for his jar again. His fingers brush the coins, smooth and cold. He does not speak. He does not think. He simply continues. Across town, a bus stops to let passengers off. A mother steadies her child, counting coins for the fare. Each coin she hands over is part of a larger rhythm. A rhythm of survival. A rhythm of small, unnoticed choices. She will not know it today, but each careful action is a micro-investment in patience, in discipline, in life's architecture. A few blocks away, a teenager scrolls through his phone. He taps a button to round up every purchase to the nearest dollar and invest the difference. A few cents here, a few cents there. He laughs at himself. It seems so small, so trivial, so invisible. Yet years from now, the laughter will echo over wealth he could not yet imagine. Psychologists call this temporal discounting, the human tendency to prefer immediate rewards over delayed benefits. It is hardwired, a survival mechanism from a world where tomorrow was never promised. Yet in the modern world, where time can be leveraged, where knowledge compounds, it is a trap. The trap that micro-investors learn to escape. Each small choice bends the future. Each decision, no matter how tiny, accumulates. A dollar saved today may seem insignificant. Yet with the invisible force of compounding, it transforms into thousands, then tens of thousands, then unimaginable sums. And the psychological impact is profound. With each action, confidence grows. Habits solidify. A sense of control emerges. In the park, an old man feeds pigeons. He drops crumbs one at a time, watching them scatter, compete, survive. He smiles faintly, knowing instinctively that small contributions create ripples. The pigeons may forget him tomorrow. He may not see the results. But the action, persistent and patient, shapes outcomes he cannot fully measure. This is the quiet magic of micro-investments. Invisible forces at work. Decisions that appear meaningless accumulate into enormous power. And society, impatient and distracted, misses it. People look for the lottery. The headline. The one moment that changes everything. Rarely do they notice the snowflake that slowly covers the mountain, until an avalanche cannot be ignored. Economists note this in behavioral studies. The snowball effect of wealth is underestimated because growth is gradual, hidden beneath layers of everyday life. Small investments compound exponentially, but humans rarely think exponentially. They think linearly. $1,000 feels like a lot. $100 repeated over years feels negligible. Yet time changes the equation. Time is the invisible multiplier. The young woman from the bakery walks past a cafe. She pauses. Her phone buzzes. A notification shows her micro-investments gaining fractionally, tiny percentages, unnoticed by others. She stares for a moment, realizing the quiet force at work. She smiles, not because of money, but because she glimpses the principle: consistent small actions shape the world. And it is not just money. Micro-investments shape knowledge, relationships, health, opportunity. A book read one chapter at a time. A skill practiced 5 minutes a day. A conversation held with patience and intent. Each one seems trivial. Each one seems inconsequential. And yet, each one builds a network of unseen power that reveals itself only over time. In a dimly lit office, a young programmer deposits code, line by line, committing small improvements daily. He does not see the impact. He does not know the bugs he prevents, the efficiency he creates, the career that will bloom from patient repetition. Yet these micro-investments in craft accumulate silently. And when the time comes, his work is not just functional, it is genius shaped by unseen effort. There is a neurological component to this as well. Human brains respond to patterns, to repetition. Dopamine, the chemical of reward, is triggered not only by sudden success, but by incremental wins. Micro-investments exploit this principle subtly. They reward the brain, reinforce behavior, and create cycles of momentum invisible to the casual observer. The city is alive with these invisible acts. Coins dropped, investments rounded up, skills honed, habits built, knowledge absorbed, all unnoticed by most, yet accumulating in a quiet force that will reshape destinies. And yet, there is a tension inherent in this practice. Patience is difficult. Trust in small actions is rare. Humans are wired to demand results. We look for shortcuts, for dramatic leaps. We are taught to admire the explosion, the sudden rise, the viral success. Micro-investments require resisting this instinct. They require embracing invisibility. A street musician plays a melody over and over, repeating the same notes, the same chord progressions, day after day. Few notice. Fewer stop to listen. Yet the repetition sharpens skill, builds intuition, creates an ability that can eventually command stages, audiences, and influence. The principle is the same: silent, repeated actions grow into dominance. In the apartment, the man now counts his coins. Each one represents a decision made, a moment of patience, a refusal to succumb to the noise of the immediate. It is not wealth yet. Not in the sense the world measures. But it is power, silent, invisible, immeasurable in the present, and yet inevitable in its accumulation. Behavioral studies show that wealth is often less about risk-taking and more about discipline. Those who accumulate quietly are the ones who survive downturns. Those who leverage time, who invest in the small, who understand the psychology of patience, are the ones who eventually command freedom. Outside, traffic flows. Pedestrians hurry. Phones buzz. Life moves at the speed of attention. Most are blind to the quiet forces at work. Most will never understand how small actions, repeated with intent, can transform their reality. And yet, the truth is there, persistent, waiting. A college student contributes a few dollars to a fractional investment account. Each week, a tiny increase. She forgets about it. Months later, she checks. The sum has grown. She feels awe. She feels disbelief. She has touched the edge of a principle so fundamental, so profound, it feels like discovering a secret of the universe, that time and consistency can outweigh scale and drama. The man drops another coin. A fraction of a moment. Yet it echoes through the architecture of his life. His actions, invisible, accumulate. Momentum builds. Reality bends. And he continues, unaware of the magnitude forming quietly around him. This is the world of micro-investments, invisible, patient, relentless. A quiet force that defies intuition, that challenges assumptions, that operates beneath the radar of human perception. And yet, it is real. Its consequences are massive. Its power is unavoidable for those who persist. Across the city, a pattern emerges. Tiny actions ripple, habits compound, repetition creates advantage, knowledge grows, wealth manifests, and the world, oblivious, marches onward. Only the patient, the observant, the persistent notice. Only they harness it. And in noticing, a new world emerges. One where small actions have massive consequences. One where time is the multiplier. One where silent effort becomes invisible power. Night falls over the city like a velvet curtain. Lights shimmer in apartments, office towers, streets. Somewhere, a single window glows brighter than the rest. The man sits by it, staring at the coins stacked neatly on the table. His eyes trace the edges. He doesn't speak. He barely breathes. He just watches, knowing that something invisible is at work. Across town, a young woman scrolls through a dashboard of tiny investments. Fractions of dollars, pennies saved, small automated deposits. Numbers barely register. And yet, over months, they have grown into a quiet, undeniable presence. A ripple that once seemed trivial now hums with power, stretching into possibilities she cannot yet name. Science calls it compounding. Sociology calls it the accumulation of small actions. Psychology calls it momentum. But in reality, it is closer to magic than math. Invisible, unnoticed, relentless. On a dimly lit street, a man bends to tie his shoe. A child's laughter echoes from a nearby alley. The sound is brief, fleeting. Yet it resonates. Every small moment is part of a pattern. Every seemingly insignificant action contributes to a larger structure, unseen yet inevitable. Every day, millions of micro-actions occur unnoticed. A subscription rounded up, a small fraction invested, a minute of learning, a word of encouragement, a choice to walk instead of drive. Tiny ripples that, over time, collide, merge, build currents too powerful to resist. Economists often overlook this. They focus on dramatic risk, on ventures that seem explosive, on headlines that shout. But wealth is not built in headlines. It is built in whispers, in quiet repetitions, in decisions invisible to others. The headline is the result of the accumulation, not the origin. In a cramped apartment, the man reaches for a book he has been reading a page at a time. He absorbs one paragraph, lets it sink. Day after day, a knowledge base forms. Skills sharpen, perspective deepens. A few pages here, a few minutes there, tiny micro-investments that alter the trajectory of his life. A young coder uploads a tiny piece of software, iterating slowly. Each commit seems insignificant, each line of code trivial. But months later, the accumulation becomes a product. A platform, a movement. The invisible pattern of small decisions, repeated, becomes unstoppable. The city hums with activity. Cars honk. Phones buzz. Conversations collide. And beneath it all, micro-investments pulse silently. They shape opportunity, perception, skill, and fortune. Every habit, every repeated action, is a thread in an invisible tapestry of power. Behavioral psychologists note a paradox. Humans undervalue the small and overvalue the dramatic. A lottery ticket feels like opportunity. A penny invested each day feels inconsequential. Yet the mathematics of time rewards the tiny, repeated, and persistent far more reliably than the occasional explosion of luck. Outside, a street lamp flickers. A cat crosses the sidewalk, pausing briefly to observe the world. Its tiny choices, every step, every twitch of attention, affect outcomes imperceptible in the moment. So too with human behavior. Every small decision, repeated, accumulates into enormous consequences. The young woman checks her app again. Micro-investments have grown. Fractional percentages have compounded. She feels awe, a strange thrill. Not for money alone, but for the realization that patience, repetition, and quiet consistency wield more power than she ever imagined. In another part of the city, an old musician plays the same chord progression for hours, day after day. Few listen, even fewer care, but the repetition sharpens skill, deepens intuition, and eventually produces music that moves thousands. The same principle applies to life, wealth, and opportunity. Repetition is invisible, yet transformative. In the apartment, the man drops another coin. Another small action, another seed, planted. It is quiet, it is invisible, yet it accumulates, slowly, relentlessly, unstoppably. Humans are wired for immediacy. Instant feedback, instant gratification. Social media, headlines, constant notifications, all train the brain to ignore the slow, to dismiss the incremental, to mistake flash for substance. Yet micro-investments exploit the blind spot of human perception, turning patience into an unfair advantage. Across the city, countless small actions repeat: coins dropped, apps checked, lines of code written, books read, steps walked, minutes studied, habits formed. Individually, insignificant. Collectively, unstoppable. The rhythm of hidden accumulation becomes a silent force bending reality. A young entrepreneur measures time in minutes, not headlines. She dedicates small, precise increments to learning, building, creating. Each micro-investment compounds. Each repetition generates leverage invisible to the impatient eye. Months later, she is not suddenly rich. She is suddenly powerful, not in wealth alone, but in ability, freedom, and influence. The man by the window watches night settle. Shadows lengthen. He counts coins again, letting each one echo in his mind. The repetition is meditative. The quiet accumulation becomes a rhythm, a heartbeat of hidden progress. He cannot yet see the result. He cannot yet measure the force he has created. But it is there, undeniable, unstoppable. Even nature follows this principle. Rivers form from drops. Mountains rise from tectonic patience. Forests grow from seeds scattered across decades. The slow, invisible, persistent force of micro-actions shapes landscapes, ecosystems, societies, and lives. The psychological effect is profound. Micro-investments condition the mind to notice patterns, to act patiently, to predict outcomes, to leverage tiny advantages. They train intuition, sharpen judgment, and create opportunities invisible to the impulsive. In a subway car, passengers move mechanically. Phones in hands, coins jingling in pockets. Minute actions, unseen and uncelebrated, ripple through lives. One tap of a screen, one saved dollar, 1 minute of attention, accumulating silently, invisibly, reshaping reality. Even small acts of kindness, micro-decisions to help, to encourage, to teach, operate on the same principle. They accumulate social capital, build trust, and generate influence that compounds over years. The same principle applies across wealth, knowledge, skill, and human connection. The tiny, repeated, persistent action is the engine of transformation. The young woman closes her app, feeling the weight of realization. Small actions matter more than grand gestures. Time compounds. Patience multiplies. Repetition is the invisible architect of wealth, power, and freedom. The man drops yet another coin. The rhythm is hypnotic. The accumulation is quiet. The power is immense. And still, he continues. Unseen, unrecognized, unstoppable. And across the city, countless others repeat the pattern. Actions invisible in isolation, transformations invisible in progress. Yet together, a network of invisible momentum grows, bending reality for those patient enough to notice, persistent enough to act. Every small choice, repeated, is a micro-investment. Every habit built, every fraction of effort, every tiny allocation of time, attention, or money compounds. And when the moment arrives, the invisible becomes undeniable. The quiet becomes unstoppable. The city sleeps, yet beneath its surface, the rhythm of accumulation persists. Coins clink, apps tick, keys click, pages turn, steps are taken, Habits reinforced, knowledge absorbed, opportunity shaped, lives transformed. The principle is simple, yet ignored. Small actions, repeated over time, produce results too large to be ignored. Invisible, quiet, patient, these actions defy human intuition and reshape reality itself. And in this unseen world, those who embrace micro-investments are no longer ordinary. They wield hidden power. They move ahead of the crowd. They shape circumstances that others assume are random. They become masters of time, compounding, and opportunity.